I remember the night James disappeared like it was yesterday. It wasn't just any night, it was our wedding night. The happiest day of my life turned into a waking nightmare before the sun even had a chance to rise. One moment, we were dancing, his hand firm against my waist, his lips brushing against my ear as he whispered how much he loved me. The next moment he was gone. Vanished. Without a trace. No notes. No calls. No signs of struggle. Just an empty hotel room, his tuxedo jacket draped over a chair, and the faint smell of his cologne lingering in the air. The police investigated, of course. They searched high and low, questioning every guest, every vendor, even the hotel staff. But there was nothing. No security footage. No witnesses. Just an unexplainable void where my husband was supposed to be. Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into months. And as much as I tried to move forward, to accept that maybe he had cold feet or some secret life I never knew about, something inside me refused to believe he had simply run away. James wasn't that kind of man. I knew him, at least I thought I did. For years, I carried the weight of his disappearance. Every birthday, every anniversary, every night I laid in bed alone, I wondered, where did he go? Why didn't he come back? And most haunting of all, was he even alive? But life has a cruel way of pushing you forward, even when you don't want to move. Eventually I stopped waiting. I stopped hoping. I stopped believing in miracles. Until the night I saw him again. 10 years later. It was supposed to be a normal evening. Just another late shift at the bookstore, another mindless drive home, another empty apartment waiting for me. But then as I crossed the street, my heart stopped. There he was. James. Alive. Breathing. Smiling. Sitting at a cafe, laughing with a woman who wasn't me. His hair was a little longer, his face a little older, but there was no mistaking it. It was him. And the moment he saw me, his smile dropped. His entire body stiffened. His eyes, those same deep blue eyes that once looked at me with nothing but love, were now filled with something else. Fear. I didn't think. I just acted. My feet moved before my mind could catch up. James? I called, my voice trembling. He stood up so fast that he knocked over his chair. The woman beside him looked confused, alarmed even, but James? He looked like he had seen a ghost. Then he ran. Again. Without a second thought, I chased after him. I didn't care about the people staring, the horns blaring as I darted through traffic. I just knew I couldn't lose him. Not again. Not this time. James? Stop. I screamed. But he didn't. He kept running, faster than I ever thought he could, weaving through the crowded streets like a man being hunted. And then, just when I thought I had him, just when I was close enough to grab him, he disappeared. Again. Only this time I saw exactly where he went. A black car. Waiting at the curb. The door flung open, and before I could reach him, James dove inside. The car sped off, tires screeching against the pavement, leaving me breathless and shaking on the sidewalk. But not before I saw it. The man in the driver's seat. The same man I had seen at my wedding 10 years ago. The same man who had been sitting in the back row, alone, watching us with an expression I could never quite place. The same man who had been there the night James disappeared. And in that moment, a chilling realization washed over me. James hadn't just left that night. He had been taken. And now, 10 years later, he was still running. But from what? Or worse, who? I barely slept that night. My mind was a storm of questions, my pulse still erratic from the chase. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw his face again, pale, terrified, desperate. And that man, the one from our wedding, who was he? And why was James still with him after all these years? I had to find out. The next morning, I called in sick to work. There was no way I could go about my day like nothing had happened. Instead, I returned to the cafe where I had seen him, hoping for some clue, some connection, anything. But there was nothing. Just the faint scent of coffee and the ghost of yesterday's shock. Frustrated, I did what any desperate person would do. I started digging. I went online, searching for any trace of James. Obituaries. Missing persons reports. Social media. Nothing. It was like he had been wiped from existence after our wedding. But then, something strange happened. As I scrolled through old wedding photos on my laptop, I noticed something I had never paid attention to before. In the background of several pictures, blurred but unmistakable, was the same man. He wasn't just in one or two photos. He was in almost all of them. Watching. Waiting. And suddenly, I knew this wasn't a coincidence. Someone had been watching us long before James disappeared. And I was going to find out why. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. The more I stared at those photos, the more my stomach twisted into knots. This man, whoever he was, had been there the entire time, lurking in the background of one of the most important days of my life. And now, 10 years later, he was still in James's life. What? I needed answers. And I wasn't going to sit around waiting for them to come to me. I grabbed my keys and drove straight to the only place I could think of, James's parents' house. I hadn't spoken to them in years, not since the early days after his disappearance when grief had made every conversation unbearable. But if anyone knew something, anything, it had to be them. When I pulled up in front of their modest home, I hesitated. My fingers hovered over the door handle, 1,000 possibilities racing through my mind. What if they slammed the door in my face? What if they still blamed me? Worse, what if they knew more than they had ever let on? I forced myself out of the car. The door creaked open after the second knock, and there she was, Margaret, James's mother. Her once dark hair was almost completely gray now, her face lined with a grief that hadn't faded. The moment her eyes landed on me, her breath hitched. Sophia? Her voice was barely above a whisper. I swallowed hard. Hi, Margaret. She didn't slam the door. She didn't scream at me to leave. Instead, she did something that caught me completely off guard. She started crying. Before I could react, she pulled me into a tight embrace, her frail body shaking against mine. Oh, sweetheart, she choked out. I never thought I'd see you again. Tears burned in my own eyes, but I held them back. I need to talk to you. It's about James. At that, she stiffened. Slowly, she pulled away and looked at me, her expression unreadable. Then she nodded and stepped aside. Come in. The house looked almost exactly the same as I remembered, except emptier. The framed photos of James that once lined the walls were gone. His childhood trophies, his books, the little signs that he had ever lived here, vanished, as if he had never existed at all. Margaret led me to the living room and gestured for me to sit. Would you like some tea? She asked, her voice strangely formal. I shook my head. I just need answers. She exhaled slowly, sitting across from me. I always hoped you'd move on, she admitted. That you wouldn't come back looking for ghosts. I clenched my hands together. James isn't a ghost. I saw him. Last night. Her eyes widened. For the briefest moment, something flickered across her face. Shock? Fear? Then just as quickly she masked it. You saw him, she repeated carefully. I nodded. He was at a cafe. But when he saw me, he ran. And then, I hesitated. There was a man. He picked James up in a black car. Margaret went completely still. I pressed forward. Who is he? He was at our wedding. I saw him in our pictures. And now, 10 years later, he's still with James. What's going on? For a long moment, she said nothing. Just sat there, staring at her hands as if debating whether or not to speak. Then, in the quietest voice, she said something that sent chills down my spine. I told them to let you go. I felt my heart stop. What? I whispered. She slowly lifted her gaze to mine, and there was something almost apologetic in her eyes. I begged them, she said, voice trembling. I told them you weren't a part of this. That you didn't know anything. Cold dread seeped into my bones. You knew. My voice shook. You knew where he was this whole time? Tears welled up in her eyes. Sophia, it was never supposed to be like this. James, he never wanted you to be involved. He loved you more than anything. That's why he left. No, I snapped. That's not why. He was taken. I saw the fear in his eyes. He wasn't running from me, he was running from them. Margaret flinched. I leaned forward, my pulse hammering. Who are they? She hesitated, then whispered, people you don't want to find. I shook my head. That's not good enough. A tear slipped down her cheek. If you love James, if you ever loved him, you'll walk away. Right now. You'll pretend you never saw him. No, I stood up, heart pounding. I lost him once. I'm not losing him again. Margaret closed her eyes. Then you're already in danger. I didn't care. I turned and stormed toward the door, my mind racing with everything I had just learned. I barely made it to my car before my phone buzzed in my pocket. Unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. A low, unfamiliar voice came through the speaker. Stop looking for him. My breath caught in my throat. Who is this? I demanded. Silence. Then just before the line cut out, a chilling final warning. You were supposed to forget. My fingers tightened around my phone as the call ended, my heartbeat thundering in my ears. You were supposed to forget. The words felt like a noose tightening around my throat. Whoever this was, they had been watching me, tracking me, and now they were warning me. But why? I forced myself to take a deep breath, gripping the steering wheel as I sat in my car outside Margaret's house. My instincts screamed at me to drive away, to leave this all behind. But I couldn't. Not after what I had just heard. I needed to know the truth. I needed to know what had happened to James. And I knew exactly where to start. The man in the wedding photos. Back at my apartment, I pulled up the photos again. The man wasn't just lurking in the background, he was always positioned near James. Watching. Waiting. This wasn't a coincidence. I zoomed in on one of the clearer shots, studying his face. He was older, maybe late 40s or early 50s at the time. Sharp features. Dark, calculating eyes. Something about him sent chills down my spine. Then an idea struck me. I uploaded the photo to an image search engine, hoping for a hit. Seconds later, the results loaded. My stomach dropped. His name was Vincent Calloway. And according to the news article at the top of the search results, he had been declared dead 5 years ago. A ghost from the past. I clicked on the article, my hands shaking. Vincent Calloway, a former government contractor, was found dead under mysterious circumstances. His work remains classified, and details surrounding his passing were never made public. A cold sensation crept up my spine. Government contractor? Classified work? What the hell had James been involved in? I kept scrolling. There wasn't much else. Just vague statements about his career, no specifics, no personal details. It was like someone had scrubbed his existence clean. Except for one thing. At the bottom of the page, there was a grainy black and white photo of Calloway leaving a building. And walking beside him, just barely visible in the corner of the image, was James. My breath hitched. James had known him. They had worked together. And now, 10 years later, Calloway was supposed to be dead, but I had just seen him driving that black car. Nothing about this made sense. A dangerous lead. I knew I was getting close to something. Something I wasn't supposed to find. So I did the only thing I could think of. I tracked down the reporter who wrote the article. Her name was Elena Monroe, and after a quick online search, I found out she still worked as an investigative journalist for a small independent news outlet. I called the number listed on the website. She picked up after the second ring. Elena Monroe speaking. I swallowed hard. Hi, my name is Sophia Carter. I need to ask you about Vincent Calloway. There was a brief silence on the other end. Then, who gave you this number? My grip tightened on my phone. No one. I just read your article. I think he's alive. Elena let out a short, humorless laugh. That's impossible. I saw him, I insisted. Last night. And I have photos of him from 10 years ago, at my wedding. This time, the silence stretched longer. Then her voice dropped to a whisper. Where are you right now? My apartment. Why? She hesitated. We can't talk on the phone. Meet me at Riverside Park in an hour. Near the old bridge. Before I could respond, she hung up. My stomach twisted. Something about her urgency, her fear, it only made me more certain. I wasn't just chasing after James. I was chasing a secret someone was willing to kill for. And I had no idea how deep this rabbit hole went. An hour later, I stood beneath the old bridge at Riverside Park, my fingers tucked into the sleeves of my jacket as a cool breeze sent a shiver down my spine. The sun was starting to set, casting long shadows across the empty path. I checked my phone. 6:58 p.m. 2 minutes. I wasn't sure what I was expecting. A woman in a trench coat, sunglasses maybe? Someone glancing over her shoulder like she was being followed? Instead, Elena Monroe arrived looking normal. She was in her mid-40s with short, dark hair and tired eyes. Dressed casually, jeans, sneakers, a gray sweater. If I had passed her on the street, I wouldn't have thought twice. But the way she moved, quick, deliberate, scanning her surroundings, told me she wasn't taking any chances. She stopped a few feet away from me. You came alone? I nodded. You sounded like I should. She let out a breath. Good. Without another word, she motioned for me to follow her deeper under the bridge, away from any prying eyes. Once we were alone, she turned to face me. Show me. I pulled out my phone and opened the wedding photos, zooming in on Calloway's face. This was 10 years ago, I said. He was at my wedding. She studied the image, her brow furrowing. Then I pulled up the photo from the article, the one of Calloway walking with James. The second she saw it, her expression darkened. Where did you get this? She demanded. It was in your article. She exhaled sharply, shaking her head. No, it wasn't. That photo was never supposed to be published. My pulse quickened. What do you mean? Elena glanced around, lowering her voice. After Calloway's death, I was given access to a handful of classified files. That photo was among them. But the version that was released to the public, James wasn't in it. A chill ran through me. They edited him out? Yes. She met my eyes. And that means he wasn't just some bystander. He was part of whatever Calloway was involved in. I swallowed. Do you know what that was? Elena hesitated. Then slowly she reached into her bag and pulled out a thin folder. She handed it to me. Take a look. I flipped it open. The first page was a document with redacted sections. A government report of some kind. The words Project Horizon were stamped at the top. What is this? Elena crossed her arms. The last thing Calloway was working on before he died. A top-secret program, something buried so deep even I couldn't get all the details. But from what I gathered, she paused. It had to do with disappearing people. My breath caught. Disappearing? She nodded. People who had information they weren't supposed to have. People who needed to be erased. A sick realization hit me. Are you saying James was part of this? She hesitated. I don't know if he was part of it, or if he was a target of it. The ground felt unsteady beneath me. 10 years ago, James disappeared. Not because he ran. Not because of cold feet. But because something, made him disappear. And now he was on the run. So, after all this time, I looked up at Elena, my heart pounding. What do I do? She studied me for a long moment. Then she said something that sent a fresh wave of terror through me. They already know you're looking. Which means you have two choices. I swallowed hard. What are they? She exhaled. You either stop now and pretend none of this ever happened. A beat of silence. Or you go all the way and find out the truth. My hands trembled as I closed the folder. There was no choice. I had to know. Whatever had happened to James, whoever had taken him, I was going to find out. Even if it killed me. I didn't sleep that night. Even after I left the park, even after I locked my apartment door and double-checked the windows, I felt watched. Elena's warning echoed in my head. They already know you're looking. I kept thinking about that phone call. Stop looking for him. Whoever was behind this, whoever had been pulling the strings for the past 10 years, was still watching. And now they knew I wasn't stopping. I paced my apartment trying to make sense of everything. The wedding photos. The black car. Vincent Calloway. Project Horizon. What did it all mean? Then something clicked. Margaret. She had known. She had tried to warn me. And yet she had never told me everything. Because she was scared. I grabbed my keys and headed out the door. Confronting Margaret. By the time I arrived at James's parents' house, the sun was just beginning to rise. The street was quiet, the neighborhood still asleep. I hesitated at the door before knocking. A few moments later, Margaret answered. She looked exhausted, like she hadn't slept either. When she saw me, her face paled. Sophia. We need to talk. She glanced over her shoulder as if afraid someone was listening. Then, with a sigh, she stepped aside. This time the house felt different. The last time I was here, I had been asking for answers. Now I was demanding them. Margaret wrung her hands. You didn't stop, did you? No, I said firmly. And I won't. She closed her eyes for a long moment. Then finally she sank onto the couch, staring at the floor. I knew this day would come, she whispered. I sat down across from her. Tell me the truth. She was quiet for a long time. Then finally she said, the night James disappeared, he didn't just vanish. He was taken. I clenched my fist. Who took him? Margaret's lips trembled. The government. I felt a cold shiver run down my spine. Why? She hesitated. Because he knew something he wasn't supposed to. I leaned forward. About Project Horizon? Her eyes snapped to mine in shock. How do you know about that? I swallowed. Because I'm not the only one looking for answers. Margaret exhaled shakily. James worked for them, she admitted. Not officially, but in secret. He had access to classified files, things most people don't even know exist. One day he found something. Something he shouldn't have. What was it? I asked. Margaret shook her head. I don't know. He never told me. But whatever it was bad enough that they came for him. My chest tightened. And you just let them take him? Tears welled up in her eyes. They gave me no choice. They told me if I ever spoke about it, if I ever went looking for him, they'd make me disappear too. And worse, they'd come for you. A lump formed in my throat. That's why she had stayed silent. Not because she didn't care, but because she was protecting me. I swallowed hard. Margaret, he's alive. She sucked in a sharp breath. You saw him? I nodded. And he's still running. From them. Margaret's hands trembled. Then you need to stop, Sophia. Before it's too late. I shook my head. I can't. Her eyes filled with fresh tears. Then promise me something. What? If you find him, don't let them take him again. I reached across and squeezed her hand. I won't. Margaret walked me to the door, but just as I was about to leave, she hesitated. There's something else, she whispered. I turned. What? She bit her lip, then slowly reached into a drawer. When she pulled out a folded piece of paper, my breath caught. I found this after he disappeared, she admitted. I never showed it to anyone. I didn't want them to know I had it. I took the letter with trembling fingers and unfolded it. It was James's handwriting, and it was addressed to me. Sophia, if you're reading this, it means they finally came for me. I don't know how much time I have, but you need to know the truth. This wasn't an accident. It wasn't cold feet. I would never leave you. But I saw something I shouldn't have, and now they're making me disappear. Please don't come looking for me. If they know you're searching, they'll come for you too. And I can't lose you. But if you're reading this, it means you didn't listen. Which means you're in danger. Whatever you do, find Calloway. He has the answers. But be careful. Nothing is what it seems. I love you. Always, James. I stared at the letter, my heart pounding. Find Calloway. But Calloway was supposed to be dead. Except, I had seen him. He was alive. And James knew he had the answers. My hands tightened around the letter. This wasn't just about finding James anymore. This was about uncovering the truth. And I was running out of time. I read James's letter over and over, each word burning into my mind. Find Calloway. He has the answers. But Calloway was supposed to be dead. Except he wasn't. I had seen him that night in the black car. The same man from my wedding 10 years ago. And now I had proof that James had been taken, not just by anyone but by them. Whoever they were. I had two choices. Stop now, or keep going. But after 10 years of unanswered questions, after seeing James with my own eyes, I wasn't stopping. I couldn't. A lead in the shadows. Elena Monroe. She was the only person who had even heard of Project Horizon. The only person who knew anything about Calloway. I needed her help. I called her number again. No answer. I tried again. Still nothing. A sinking feeling settled in my stomach. I pulled up her name online, searching for any recent activity. An article, a tweet, something. But instead what I found sent a chill through me. Breaking news. Investigative journalist Elena Monroe found dead in apartment. The headline made my breath catch. I clicked the article, my heart racing. Authorities are calling it an accident. A fire broke out in Monroe's apartment late last night. No foul play suspected. I gripped my phone so tightly my fingers hurt. No foul play? I didn't believe that for a second. Elena had agreed to meet me. She had promised me answers. Now she was dead. This wasn't a coincidence. This was a warning. I sat in my car, my mind spinning. Elena had given me the name Project Horizon. She had led me to Calloway. But now she was gone. I had no more leads, no way to find Calloway, no way to find James. Until I remembered the folder. Elena had given me a folder at our meeting. At the time, I had only read the first page. I grabbed it from my bag, flipping through the pages. Most of it was redacted, blacked out with heavy ink. But then, on the very last page, I saw it. A handwritten note, scribbled in the corner. RC 17 Westfield Avenue, 3 a.m. No phones. My pulse quickened. Westfield Avenue. That was in the industrial district. Old warehouses, abandoned buildings. And RC? It had to be Calloway. Elena had left me a meeting place. And she had died before she could tell me. This was my only chance. I arrived at 2:45 a.m. The area was deserted. Streetlights flickered, casting eerie shadows over the cracked pavement. I parked a block away, heart pounding as I approached the old warehouse. It was dark, the windows shattered, the doors rusted. But someone had been here recently. The padlock on the side door was new. I hesitated. Was this a trap? Or was this my only way forward? I took a deep breath and stepped inside. The air was thick with dust. The only light came from a single exposed bulb hanging from the ceiling, swaying slightly. And then I heard it. Footsteps. I spun around, heart hammering. A shadow emerged from the darkness. A man. Older now but unmistakable. Vincent Calloway. Alive. And holding a gun. "Shut the door," he said, voice low. "And don't make a sound." I did as he said, my hands trembling. Then he stepped closer, studying me. "Who sent you?" I swallowed hard. "No one." "Liar." I shook my head. "I'm looking for James." At that, his expression changed. Something like recognition. And regret. He exhaled sharply. Then you're already in more danger than you realize. My throat was dry. What happened to him? Calloway hesitated. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, he said, "They didn't just take him." I clenched my fist. Then what did they do? Calloway's gaze darkened. They erased him. I stared at him. What does that mean? Calloway rubbed a hand down his face. Project Horizon wasn't just about making people disappear. It was about making them into something else. A cold chill ran through me. What are you talking about? He hesitated. Then finally he said it. They didn't kill James, Sophia. I held my breath. They changed him. I felt the ground sway beneath me. Changed him how? Calloway's jaw tightened. Whatever he saw, whatever information he found, it was too dangerous to let him walk free. But instead of killing him, they did something worse. They wiped him. My stomach dropped. What? They erased his memories, his identity, everything that made him him. They broke him down and rebuilt him into someone new. I felt like I couldn't breathe. Calloway's voice was grim. The man you saw in that cafe, Sophia? Pause. That's not James. My mind screamed no, but deep down I knew. That fear in his eyes when he saw me. The way he ran. The way he didn't call my name. Because he didn't remember me. He didn't remember anything. My James was gone. I felt the air rush out of my lungs. This wasn't possible. I had seen James, my James. I had chased him through the streets. I had seen the fear in his eyes. And now Calloway was telling me he wasn't James anymore. I shook my head, stepping back. No, you're lying. Calloway didn't react. He just watched me like he had seen this reaction before. I wish I was, he said. I could barely process it. You're telling me they just erased him? Wiped his memories? Turned him into someone else? Calloway nodded. I clenched my fist. Then why did he run from me? If he doesn't remember, why did he look so scared? Calloway exhaled. Because something in him, deep down, does remember. Not in words, not in facts, but in fear. My hands were shaking. I had spent 10 years looking for him, imagining the moment I'd find him. And now I was being told that the James the first love didn't exist anymore. That the man in that cafe was a stranger. It felt like losing him all over again. Maybe even worse. I swallowed hard. Can it be undone? Calloway hesitated. That's why they killed Elena, he said. Because she was close to finding out. A cold chill ran down my spine. There's a way, he admitted. But it's risky. And if you try, they'll come for you too. I lifted my chin. Then tell me what I need to do. Calloway glanced around the dark warehouse as if checking for unseen threats. Then he sighed. James was part of something bigger than he realized. That's why they took him. He stumbled onto classified research, something tied to Project Horizon. What kind of research? I pressed. Calloway hesitated. Cognitive engineering. I frowned. What does that even mean? He leaned in. It means they weren't just erasing people's memories. They were rewriting them. I felt my stomach drop. You're saying they didn't just take away James's past, they gave him a new one? Calloway nodded. A completely fabricated identity. New name. New history. New life. To him you don't exist. His past, his real past, is gone. I felt like I was going to be sick. But, Calloway added, memories don't just disappear. They get buried. Suppressed. And sometimes, if the right triggers are used, those memories can resurface. My heart pounded. There was a chance to bring James back. But it's dangerous, Calloway warned. If you push too hard, too fast, the mind fights back. And sometimes it breaks. I swallowed hard. How do I find him? Calloway hesitated. You already did. I frowned. Then, slowly, realization hit. The cafe. I had seen him there before. He hadn't just been passing through. He lived here. The man who had once been James was right here in the city. Calloway pulled out a small flash drive and placed it in my hand. This is everything Elena and I found. Names, locations, experiment logs. He paused. And the trigger words. I looked up. Trigger words. The words they used to lock away his real memories. My fingers tightened around the drive. If you say the right words, you might be able to break through, Calloway said. But be careful. If they realize what you're doing, they'll come for both of you. I nodded, my mind already racing. I knew what I had to do. Find him. Get close to him. And use the triggers to bring him back. But as I turned to leave, Calloway grabbed my wrist. "Sophia," he said, voice low. "Before you do this, you need to understand something." I met his gaze. "When you start this, there's no going back." I took a shaky breath. "I don't care." Calloway studied me for a long moment. Then he let go. "Then find him." I spent the next 2 days tracking him. It wasn't hard. Now that I knew where to look, I found him easily. He had a new name. Ethan Carter. He worked at an office building downtown. He lived in an apartment on 5th Street. He went to the same cafe every morning at 8:15 a.m. Everything about his life was carefully constructed. Neat. Ordered. Fit. And I was about to rip it apart. The next morning I sat at the cafe waiting. At exactly 8:15 a.m. he walked in. I held my breath. He looked so normal. So him, and yet, not. I watched as he ordered his coffee the same way he always had. No sugar. Just cream. His habits hadn't changed. His mind had. When he turned, his eyes passed right over me, no recognition at all. It took everything in me not to cry. I forced myself to stand and walk over. I needed to do this. I needed to try. I took a deep breath. "James?" I said softly. He froze. Slowly he turned to face me. His expression was polite but distant. "I'm sorry, do I know you?" My heart ached. I forced a small smile. "No, but I think we should talk." He hesitated. "I'm running late for work." "Please," I said. "Just 5 minutes." Something in my voice must have caught his attention because he hesitated. Then finally he nodded. "All right." I swallowed hard. This was it. I sat across from him, feeling my hands tremble. And then I took out the flash drive. I placed it on the table between us, and I said the first trigger word. "Everest." James, or Ethan, flinched. For a split second, something flashed across his face. A flicker of confusion. Bang. Then just as quickly it was gone. His jaw tightened. "What did you just say?" I held my breath. It was working. I leaned forward. "Do you remember our wedding night?" I asked softly. His brow furrowed. "I think you have me confused with someone else." I ignored him. "Do you remember dancing? Do you remember whispering that you loved me?" My voice wavered. "Do you remember disappearing?" Something in his expression flickered again. He squeezed his eyes shut. "I don't." I said the second trigger word. "Horizon." He inhaled sharply. His hands trembled. His breathing turned ragged. And then, he grabbed his head and groaned in pain. Memories. Buried memories. They were fighting to surface. And I wasn't going to stop now. I reached out and touched his hand. "James," I whispered. His entire body stiffened. Then slowly, he looked at me. And for the first time in 10 years, I saw recognition in his eyes. For a long moment he just stared at me. His breathing was shallow. His pupils were dilated. His fingers twitched slightly on the table. And then he whispered my name. "Sophia?" My heart nearly stopped. I nodded, barely able to breathe. Yes, James, it's me." His lips parted slightly, like he couldn't believe what he was seeing. Then his entire body tensed. His face twisted in pain and he jerked back. "No," he muttered under his breath, gripping his temples. No, this isn't real." I reached for his hand. "James, listen to me." But he pulled away like I had burned him. His breathing turned ragged, his hands trembling as he stared at me with something close to horror. "Who are you?" he demanded. I swallowed hard. "I'm your wife." He flinched like I had hit him. His chair scraped against the floor as he stood up abruptly, knocking over his coffee cup. People turned to stare, but I didn't care. I stood up too, desperate. "James, please. They did something to you. They took your memories, but they didn't take you." He shook his head violently. "No, this is a mistake. I don't know you. I don't know any of this." But the panic in his voice told me otherwise. He did know. Somewhere inside he felt it. His mind was fighting the truth, but his body remembered me. And that's why he ran. Again. He bolted out of the cafe so fast I barely had time to react. "James?" I called after him. He didn't stop. I chased him. Again. Just like 10 years ago. But this time, I wasn't letting him disappear. I followed him down the crowded sidewalk, my heart pounding. He was fast, but I was fueled by desperation. He turned a corner sharply. I followed. He sprinted across the street. I ran after him, narrowly dodging an oncoming taxi. Finally, he ducked into an alleyway. Bad move. It was a dead end. I slowed my pace as I approached, watching him pace back and forth, hands on his head, his breath uneven. He was shaking. fighting something inside. I stepped closer. James? Stop calling me that, he snapped, spinning around. His eyes were wild, his jaw clenched. I'm not James. My name is Ethan Carter. I flinched but didn't back down. I kept my voice gentle. That's the name they gave you. It's not who you are. His breathing was erratic. I could see it, his mind fracturing, two identities colliding. The life they forced on him, and the life he had forgotten. He squeezed his eyes shut. This isn't real, he muttered. This isn't real, this isn't real. Look at me, I said softly. He didn't. I took a step closer. Look at me, James. His jaw tightened. He didn't correct me this time. Progress. I took another step, lowering my voice. I need you to trust me. He let out a shaky breath. His hands clenched into fists. I reached out slowly, and for the first time in 10 years he didn't pull away. Then, his face twisted in pain, and he dropped to his knees. I barely caught him before he hit the ground. His whole body shook violently. His fingers dug into my arms. I see things, he gasped, but I don't know if they're real. What do you see? I asked urgently. He gritted his teeth, his eyes squeezed shut. A wedding, music, your face? He winced. But then it all disappears. Like it was never there. My throat tightened. That's because they took it from you. His breathing was labored. It feels like my brain is on fire. They conditioned you, James, I said desperately. They buried your real memories under false ones. But the more you fight it, the more you'll remember. He clutched his head. I don't know who I am, he whispered. I squeezed his hands. Yes, you do. You're my husband. You're James. He was trembling, but he wasn't running anymore. Then, a car screeched to a stop at the alley entrance. I whipped my head around. A black SUV. The same one I had seen before. They found us. James, Ethan, asterisk asterisk whoever he thought he was, asterisk asterisk looked up at the sound. His entire body stiffened. A man stepped out of the car, and my stomach dropped, because I knew him. It was the same man from our wedding, the one in the photos, the one who had been in the car with James that night at the cafe, the man who had taken him 10 years ago. His icy gaze landed on James. Ethan, he said, voice calm, get in the car. James's breathing turned erratic again, like an animal backed into a corner. He was terrified. I gripped his hands tighter. James, listen to me. You don't have to go with him. His hands trembled in mine. I don't know what to do, he admitted. Come with me, I pleaded. Please. Then the man stepped closer. Ethan. James flinched. I turned to glare at the man. His name is James. The man smiled slightly. Not anymore. I clenched my fist. Who are you? He ignored me, his eyes locked onto James. You're confused, he said, voice eerily soothing. That's okay. Just get in the car and we'll fix it. James swallowed hard. His body was still shaking. I could see it, the war happening inside him. The life he had been forced to live, and the life he was finally starting to remember. Then he whispered, Sophia? The man's expression darkened. I held onto James tighter. That's right, I encouraged. You know me. James squeezed his eyes shut. A decision. A single second that would change everything. Then he turned toward me. I'm not going with him, he whispered. Relief flooded through me. The gunshots. I barely had time to react before James yanked me down behind a dumpster. Bullets ricocheted off the brick wall. I heard footsteps. More voices. More men. We were surrounded. James turned to me, his eyes filled with something I hadn't seen before. Clarity. They won't stop, he said breathlessly. Not until they erase me again. I grabbed his hand. Then we run. James grabbed my hand and we ran. Bullets zipped past us, ricocheting off the brick walls of the alleyway. The SUV's tires screeched as more men jumped out, their heavy boots pounding against the pavement. We didn't stop. We didn't look back. James pulled me toward the far end of the alley, where a chain-link fence loomed ahead. A dead end. I skidded to a stop. We're trapped. James didn't hesitate. He turned, searching for another way out. There wasn't one. The men were closing in. Ethan, the leader called out, his voice smooth, controlled. Come with us now and no one gets hurt. James turned to me, his chest rising and falling rapidly. He was remembering. He was fighting. And he wasn't going back. He set his jaw. Then, without a word, he laced his fingers together and crouched down. I blinked. You want me to? Climb. His voice was sharp, commanding. The voice of the man I used to know. I didn't hesitate. I stepped onto his hands and with a grunt, he boosted me up. My fingers latched onto the top of the fence and I swung a leg over. Then I heard the gun click. I looked down. The leader had a pistol pointed directly at James's head. I felt my stomach drop. James? James lifted his hands slowly, his face unreadable. My heart pounded. Don't, please? The man smiled coldly. Come with us, and she walks away. I knew what was happening. They wouldn't kill him. Not yet. Not before they wiped him again. But me? I was a problem. And problems got erased. I saw the decision flicker in James's eyes. He was about to surrender. No, not again. I reached into my pocket and wrapped my fingers around the tiny metal object Calloway had given me. A keychain-sized pepper spray canister. Without thinking, I aimed and sprayed it directly into the leader's eyes. He screamed in pain, dropping the gun. James moved. In one swift motion, he kicked the gun away, spun around, and elbowed another man in the face. The fight had begun. I scrambled down the other side of the fence, my heart hammering as James dodged a punch, countered with his own, and sent one of the men crashing into a dumpster. The leader was still blinded, staggering back, cursing. James grabbed the edge of the fence and hoisted himself up. Bullets sprayed. I screamed. James dropped down beside me, grabbed my hand, and we ran. We didn't stop running for 3 blocks. Then 4. Then 5. When we finally ducked into an abandoned parking garage, I was gasping for air, my legs burning. James was sweating, his fists still clenched. We collapsed against the concrete wall, the city buzzing beyond us. I turned to him. Are you okay? He nodded, exhaling slowly. Then he looked at me. For the first time, really looked at me. And I saw it, the shift in his eyes. Recognition. Tell me everything, he said. His voice was hoarse but steady. So I did. I told him about our wedding night. About his disappearance. About the years I spent searching for him. I told him about Calloway. About Project Horizon. About the lies they had forced into his head. He listened. And as I spoke, I saw something break in him. Not fear. Not confusion. Anger. They stole my life, he murmured, more to himself than to me. I placed my hand over his. We'll get it back. His jaw clenched. Then, his expression darkened. No, he said quietly. They're going to pay. James wasn't just waking up. He was changing. And for the first time in 10 years, I saw the man I married. Determined, focused, dangerous. We need to disappear, I said. They'll be looking for us. James shook his head. No, running isn't enough. We need to take them down. I hesitated. We don't even know where to start. James looked at me, then reached into his pocket. He pulled out a sleek black keycard. I frowned. What's that? He exhaled. When I ran, I took this from my apartment. I don't know why, I just had a feeling. I turned it over in my hand. There was a small logo printed in the corner. Horizon. I looked up at James. A slow, determined smile spread across his face. This, he said, is where we start. We didn't have time to hesitate. James, or Ethan as they had forced him to believe, was waking up. And the more he remembered, the more dangerous this became. I gripped the keycard tightly, my mind racing. This could be the key to everything, I whispered. James's jaw was tight. Then let's find out where it leads. An hour later, we were sitting in a dingy internet cafe, huddled over an ancient computer. James inserted the keycard into a small USB reader. A loading screen flashed. Then, a password prompt. James frowned. I don't remember any passwords. Try your old ones, I suggested. He typed. Access denied. He tried again. Access denied. 1 attempt remaining. I swallowed hard. If we got this wrong, we could be locked out for good. James stared at the screen, his fingers twitching. His memories were still fractured, but I could see the gears turning. And then, something clicked. He inhaled sharply. Wait. He typed again. SOPHIA. I gasped. The screen blinked. Access granted. James turned to me, his expression unreadable. I don't know why, but I knew it had to be your name. A lump formed in my throat. No matter what they did to him, some part of him never let me go. Then, a file appeared on the screen. A single video file. James hesitated, then clicked it. The screen flickered. And then we saw him. A cold, dimly lit office. A man sitting at a desk, staring directly into the camera. It was him. The man from our wedding. The one who had taken James. The one who tried to erase him. He leaned forward, speaking in a low, deliberate voice. Ethan, if you're watching this, It means something went wrong. James stiffened beside me. The man continued. You may be feeling disoriented, conflicted. That's natural. But listen to me carefully. He paused. Then his expression hardened. Sophia is the enemy. A chill ran down my spine. James's breath hitched. She will try to convince you that your past was stolen, the man said. She will tell you lies. She will say you were once someone else. I gritted my teeth. Lies. I hissed. He was someone else. He was my husband. James was trembling, his hands balled into fists. On screen, the man's expression turned eerily calm. Ethan, if you're remembering things, if you're doubting what we told you, it's because your mind is breaking down. James's grip on the mouse tightened. Come back to us, Ethan, the man said smoothly. Let us fix you. Before it's too late. The video cut to black. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then James slowly turned to me. His hands were shaking. His voice was hoarse. They made me believe you were the enemy. I swallowed hard. But you didn't believe it. He exhaled shakily. No, I didn't. He rubbed a hand over his face. I need to remember everything. I need to know why they took me. What they did to me. I nodded. Then we find him. James's eyes darkened. And we end this. We sat in silence for a long time. James's eyes were still locked on the black screen, his fingers curled into fists. I could see it, the storm inside him. The rage. The confusion. The war between who they made him and who he really was. I reached out, placing a hand on his. We're in this together, I whispered. James took a slow breath. Then he nodded. Then let's finish what they started. We knew our next move. We had to find him, the man from the video. The one who had stolen James from me. But there was one problem. We don't even know his name, I muttered. James frowned. I do. I turned sharply. You do. His voice was quiet. I didn't remember before. But the second I saw his face, it came back to me. He clenched his jaw. Nathaniel Kane. The name sent a chill through me. Kane. A name that sounded like it belonged to a villain in a storybook. But this wasn't fiction. This was real. I grabbed my phone and started searching. Nothing. No LinkedIn. No social media. No company profiles. It was like he didn't exist. Until James leaned over, pointing at something. A classified government report. Half the text was redacted, but one thing stood out. A name, Horizon Industries. I scrolled down, and there it was. A location. A corporate facility just outside the city. I looked at James. His blue eyes were burning. They took 10 years from me, he said. His voice was low, dangerous. Let's see how they like it when we take something back. 3 hours later, we were crouched behind a chain-link fence, staring up at the looming black structure of Horizon Industries. It looked like a normal corporate building. Glass windows. Modern architecture. But something felt wrong. No signs. No branding. No movement. Just a cold, silent fortress. I exhaled. How do we get in? James's gaze flickered. There's always a way. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the keycard. The same one that had led us here. This has to work somewhere, he muttered. I swallowed hard. And if it doesn't? James didn't answer, because we both knew the truth. This didn't work. We wouldn't be walking away from this. We moved fast. A side entrance. A locked door. James swiped the keycard. Click. The lock released. I exhaled. We're in. We slipped inside, pressing against the walls as we crept down the dimly lit corridor. The air smelled sterile like chemicals and metal. James led the way, his steps quick, purposeful. His memories were still fractured, but I could tell. His body remembered this place. He knew where to go. We turned a corner, and then James suddenly froze. I followed his gaze. A glass window stretched across the hallway. Beyond it, a massive underground lab. Rows of white pods, sleek and futuristic, lined the floor. Some were open, others were sealed shut. And inside them, people. My breath caught. Oh my God. James's fists clenched. It wasn't just me. I pressed my hand to the glass, my pulse racing. They're creating people, I whispered. James's voice was tight. No, they're rewriting them. Before I could respond, a voice echoed through the hall. I was hoping you'd come back, Ethan. I turned sharply. Nathaniel Kane stood at the end of the corridor, flanked by 2 armed guards. His smile was calm, cold, like he had been waiting for us. James stepped forward, his jaw tight. You stole my life. Kane tilted his head. No, Ethan. I gave you a new one. James lunged. Gunshots rang out. I screamed, and everything went black. Bang. A ringing in my ears. The world spinning. I gasped, my body crumpled on the cold floor, my head pounding from the deafening gunfire. James, where was James? I forced my eyes open. Chaos. The hallway was filled with smoke, red emergency lights flashing. James was locked in a brutal fight with one of the guards, trading vicious blows. The other guard lay on the floor, unmoving. And Nathaniel Kane? He was walking toward me. I tried to move, too slow. Kane crouched down beside me, his expression unreadable. You shouldn't have come here, Sophia, he said softly. But you always were stubborn. His voice sent a chill through me. You stole my husband, I spat. Kane sighed, almost disappointed. Is that what he told you? Before I could react, he pulled something from his coat. A small, sleek device. He pressed a button. James, who had just knocked out the last guard, suddenly froze. His body stiffened, his breath hitched, like an invisible force had wrapped around him. His eyes widened in horror. No, no, he gasped. Kane smiled. Welcome back, Ethan. I screamed. James collapsed to his knees. His hands clutched his head, veins bulging, sweat dripping down his face. He was fighting it. Fighting whatever Kane had just triggered. I scrambled to my feet. What did you do to him? Kane stood slowly. Reactivating his programming, of course. You see, Sophia, Ethan isn't your husband. I clenched my fist. Stop calling him that. Kane sighed. Then he threw something at me. A stack of documents. Files. Photographs. I barely caught them, my hands shaking. And then I saw. My heart stopped. The photos were of James. From before our wedding. From years before I even met him. But not as James. As someone else. I shook my head. No, this is fake. This is another one of your mind games. Kane tilted his head. Is it? I flipped through the papers, my hands trembling. Government files. Black and white photos. Classified stamps. A name at the top of the page. Not James Carter. Ethan Calloway. I felt sick. I turned to James, no Ethan, who was still on his knees, gasping, his memories being forcibly rewritten. I grabbed his face, forcing him to look at me. James, Ethan, whoever you are, fight this. He was shaking violently. His pupils were blown wide, his breath coming in short, ragged bursts. Kane's voice was calm, almost amused. Tell me, Sophia, did you ever wonder why James never had any family? Why there were no childhood photos? Why he never talked about his past? Tears burned my eyes. Shut up, I whispered. Kane smiled. Your husband was never real. I gritted my teeth. You're lying? James Carter was a fabrication, Sophia. A cover identity. A life we created for him. I felt the world shift beneath me. No, this wasn't happening. Kane took a slow step forward. Ethan Calloway was one of our best operatives. But then something went wrong. I looked down at James, Ethan, whoever he was. His hands were pressed to his head, his body shaking violently. His mind was at war. His programming broke, Kane continued. He forgot who he was. And instead of returning to us, his gaze darkened. He met you. A sob caught in my throat. This is a lie, I choked out. James was real. Our love was real. Kane sighed. Oh, Sophia. Then he turned to James, no Ethan. And he said the words that shattered my world. Tell her the truth, Ethan. And then, James lifted his head. His blue eyes were filled with pain. And he whispered in a voice so broken it didn't even sound like him. I remember everything. I stood there, my entire world unraveling in front of me. James, no Ethan, was looking at me with a mixture of agony and recognition, as if two halves of himself were warring inside his head. His body was trembling, his breath uneven, his fingers digging into the floor like he was trying to hold on to something that was slipping away. I remember everything, he whispered again, barely audible. I shook my head, stepping closer. No, this isn't real. You're my husband. We were happy. We were in love. Kane let out a quiet, almost sympathetic sigh. Love? He mused. It's a powerful illusion, isn't it? I turned to him, rage burning behind my eyes. Shut up. Kane smiled slightly as if he had heard this reaction 1,000 times before. Ethan was one of our most valuable assets. A ghost. A shadow. He carried out missions no one else could, infiltrated places no one else could. But then one day something changed. A mission went wrong. A head injury. And when he woke up, He didn't remember who he was. I felt like I couldn't breathe. James Ethan was still shaking. "No," he murmured to himself. "No, I." Kane's gaze softened, like he was speaking to a child. "You weren't meant to escape, Ethan. But instead of returning to us, you disappeared into another life. You became someone else. And then you found her." He looked at me then. And that's where everything became complicated. I dropped to my knees beside James, cupping his face in my hands. His skin was burning, sweat beating down his temple. His eyes, those deep blue eyes I had fallen in love with, were flickering between recognition and something else. A cold, mechanical emptiness. "James," I whispered desperately, "listen to me. I don't care what he says. You're my husband. You're the man I married. You're not some experiment, you're not a weapon. You're you." His breath hitched like he was drowning. Then Kane spoke again. "Tell her the truth, Ethan." James's body stiffened as if invisible chains were wrapping around him. His face twisted in pain, his jaw clenched. He was fighting it, but something inside him was giving in. And then his lips parted. He gasped sharply, his pupils dilating. I was never supposed to be James Carter. A hollow silence filled the space between us. I felt my stomach drop. "No. I was created for something else," he continued, his voice shaking. "I was trained, programmed. I don't even know if the man you loved was ever real." Tears blurred my vision. "Don't say that. You are real. Everything we had was real." His face twisted with emotion. "Then why can't I tell you where I came from? Why do I have no memories before meeting you? Why do I only remember the life I had with you, and nothing else?" I grabbed his hands, holding onto him as tightly as I could. "Because they took that from you. They erased everything that made you you. That doesn't mean you were never real." James Ethan squeezed his eyes shut, like he was trying to block out the war raging in his head. He let out a ragged breath. "I don't know who I am anymore." Kane's voice was gentle, coaxing. "Then come home, Ethan." James's body jerked violently, like an invisible force was pulling him forward. His fingers trembled against mine. His breathing was ragged. I held on to him desperately. "Don't listen to him." He opened his eyes. And for the first time, I wasn't sure if the man looking at me was still my husband. Kane smiled. "Welcome back." And then James let go of my hands. He stood up, and my heart shattered. I stared at him, my entire body frozen in disbelief. James Ethan stood there, his face blank, his hands at his sides like a soldier awaiting orders. "No," I whispered, my voice barely holding together. "James, look at me." He didn't move. He didn't even blink. Kane took a step forward, a satisfied smirk playing on his lips. "Ah, there he is. The Ethan I trained. The Ethan I built." He placed a hand on James's shoulder and I flinched, expecting him to react, to fight back. But he didn't. He just stood there, like a puppet whose strings had just been reattached. I felt like I was going to be sick. "James," I tried again, my voice breaking. "You don't have to do this. I know you're still in there." He finally turned to me, but his eyes, those deep blue eyes, were empty. Not cold, not cruel, just gone. Like he had been hollowed out from the inside. I took a shaky step forward. "You promised me. You promised you'd never leave me again." His lips parted slightly, like some part of him recognized those words. But then, before I could reach him, he took a step back. My breath caught. "James?" "I don't know who that is," he said. His voice was different, stiffer, more controlled, like someone else was speaking through him. I felt my knees weaken. Kane let out a small, amused chuckle. "I must admit, Sophia, I almost believed you could pull him back. But you see, love doesn't undo conditioning. And Ethan was conditioned for years before he ever met you." I clenched my fists, rage mixing with my heartbreak. "You brainwashed him. I rescued him." Kane tilted his head. "He's not your husband, Sophia. He never was. He was a ghost and you fell in love with a lie." "No," I shook my head. "You're wrong. He chose me. Maybe he was someone else before, but he chose me. He built a life with me. My voice cracked. "He loved me." Kane sighed. "Then let's put that to the test." And then he turned to James, "No, Ethan," and said something that made my blood run cold. "Kill her." I barely had time to react. James Ethan, ***, ***, faster than I'd ever seen. One second he was standing there, motionless. The next, he had a gun pointed directly at my head. I gasped, stumbling back. This wasn't happening. This couldn't be happening. I searched his face, begging for something, asterisk anything asterisk, human in his expression. James, I choked out. Nothing. His grip on the gun didn't waver. His eyes didn't flicker. He was perfectly still, perfectly obedient. I felt my heart cracking apart. This was the man who had held me on cold nights, who had whispered that he would love me until the day he died, who had disappeared on our wedding night only for me to find him like this. This wasn't real. This couldn't be real. Tears blurred my vision. You won't do it. His finger twitched over the trigger. Kane's voice was calm. Prove her wrong, Ethan. James inhaled sharply. His hand shook, just slightly, but I saw it. And in that moment, I knew. He was still in there, buried under all the programming, buried under the weight of his stolen past. But he was fighting. I took a careful step toward him, raising my hands in surrender. James, listen to me. I know you're scared. I know you feel like you don't know who you are. But I do. My voice wavered. You are the man who made me laugh when I thought I would never be happy again. You are the man who used to dance with me in the kitchen when no music was playing. You are the man who swore he would never leave me. His breathing hitched. Kane noticed. His expression darkened. Ethan. His voice was sharp now. Pull the trigger. James flinched. I pressed forward. You know me. I'm not just some random person in your head. I'm your wife. My voice cracked on the last word. You love me. Something flickered in his eyes. A small, fractured moment of recognition. Kane must have seen it too, because suddenly his expression twisted with frustration. That's enough, he snapped. Before I could react, he reached into his coat and pulled out a second gun. Everything happened at once. Kane raised the gun toward me. James, Ethan, asterisk moved, asterisk. And before Kane could pull the trigger, James turned and shot him. Kane staggered back, his eyes widening in shock. He let out a strangled sound, gripping his stomach where blood was already blooming through his expensive suit. For the first time he looked afraid. He stumbled, dropping the gun. His breath came in ragged, uneven gasps. His eyes flickered up to James, disbelief written across his face. You, he coughed. You were mine. James, Ethan, stood perfectly still. His arm was still raised, the gun still pointed at Kane. His expression was blank. Then he lowered the gun. His gaze flickered to me. And in a voice so quiet, so broken, he whispered, I remember you. And then he collapsed. James collapsed before I could catch him. His body hit the ground with a dull thud, his face pale, his breath coming in ragged, uneven gasps. No, 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 James. I dropped to my knees beside him, pressing my hands against his chest, trying to find any sign of a wound. He wasn't shot, thank God, but his body was trembling like he was fighting something inside him. His fingers curled weakly around my wrist. Sophia. I let out a broken sob. I'm here. I'm right here. Kane let out a wet cough from across the room. I turned just in time to see him slump against the wall, blood soaking through his suit. His breathing was uneven, but he still managed a weak, amused chuckle. You think this is over? His voice was hoarse. You think you won? Rage surged through me. I wanted to scream at him, to finish what James had started. But right now James needed me more. I ignored Kane and turned back to my husband. His face was twisted in pain, beads of sweat forming on his forehead. What's happening to him? I demanded. Kane laughed again, but it ended in a sharp cough. You really don't know, do you? He tilted his head weakly toward James. He's breaking. My stomach twisted. Breaking? Kane's smile was eerie, even with blood staining his teeth. The mind is a fragile thing, Sophia. And when you rewire it over and over, eventually it fractures. James let out a soft groan, his grip on my wrist tightening. His eyes fluttered open, just for a moment. And I saw it. A flicker of something wrong. He was looking at me, but it was like he wasn't seeing me. Like parts of him were flickering between memories, between selves. No, I whispered. Stay with me. James's breathing hitched. I don't know who I am. His voice was raw, tormented. I cupped his face. You're James Carter. My husband. The man I love. The man who fought to come back to me. His pupils dilated. His breath came out in a shaky exhale. And then, suddenly, his body jerked violently. I gasped, holding on to him as his muscles tensed, his back arching off the ground. It was like something inside him was resetting, trying to override itself. Kane's voice was weak but smug. He's glitching. Terror clawed at my chest. How do I stop it? Kane smirked. You don't. I barely registered what happened next. the distant sound of sirens, the flickering lights overhead. The way Kane's body went still, his breathing slowing. And James suddenly stopped moving. I froze. James? No response. His body was limp, his eyes half open. I shook him. James, wake up. Wake up. But he didn't. And for the first time, I felt true soul-crushing fear. I felt my entire world collapse in that moment. James wasn't moving. His breathing had gone eerily still, his body limp in my arms. No, James. My voice cracked as I shook him, desperate, my fingers digging into his jacket. Don't do this. Don't you dare do this to me. Nothing. Panic surged through me like wildfire. I pressed my fingers against his neck, searching for a pulse. Come on. There. Faint. Weak. But still there. I let out a shaky breath, trying to steady my trembling hands. He was alive, but barely. I whipped my head toward Kane, rage bubbling in my throat. What did you do to him? Kane let out a soft, labored laugh, blood trickling from his lips. His body was slumped against the wall now, his breaths uneven. I told you, he rasped. He's breaking. I clenched my jaw. Fix it. Kane's smile widened slightly, like he found the idea amusing. It's not that simple, Sophia. His mind isn't just fractured, it's overloaded. Every identity, every memory, every bit of conditioning, all colliding at once. My hands curled into fists. Then tell me how to stop it. Kane's eyes darkened. You can't. A fresh wave of fear crashed over me. I looked back at James, his face still pale, his body still unnervingly still. I needed to get him out of here. No. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder by the second. I turned to Kane. Who else did this to him? You weren't working alone. He smiled weakly, blood staining his teeth. You already know the answer to that. I did. The shadowy figures in the background. The men who had been watching our wedding. The organization that had taken him before and would try to take him again. This wasn't over. I grabbed James's arm, hoisting him up as best as I could. His head lolled against my shoulder, his weight heavy, but I wasn't letting go. Not now. Not ever. Kane let out one last, shallow breath. Then he went still. I didn't wait to check if he was truly dead. I didn't care. All that mattered now was getting James out of here before they came. Because if what Kane said was true, James wasn't just glitching. He was running out of time. I barely made it out of the building before the sirens closed in. My pulse pounded in my ears as I half-carried, half-dragged James down the dimly lit alley behind the warehouse. He was still unconscious, his body heavy against mine, his breath shallow and uneven. I needed a plan. I needed help. But who could I trust? The police? No. If this was as deep as I feared, they might already be compromised. A hospital? Too risky. If the people who did this to him were still watching, that would be the first place they'd look. I was running out of options. Then my phone buzzed in my pocket. I fumbled for it, still gripping James with one arm. My hands were slick with sweat, my fingers trembling as I pulled the device out. Unknown number. I hesitated. Then with a deep breath I answered. A distorted voice came through the line. Take him to the old motel off Route 6. Room 14. Hurry. My stomach twisted. Who is this? Pause. Then. You don't have time for questions, Sophia. The call ended. I stared at the phone, my breath shaky. This was insane. I had no idea who that was, if it was a trap, if I was running straight into more danger. But I did know one thing. James was slipping away. And if I hesitated, I might lose him forever. So, without another thought, I tightened my grip on him and dragged him toward my car. Whoever had just called me knew something. And I was willing to risk everything to find out what. I drove like a madwoman, my fingers gripping the wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. The road was dark, barely illuminated by my headlights, and the only sound was James's shallow breathing in the passenger seat. Every few seconds I glanced at him, my heart hammering. He looked worse, his skin clammy, his body barely responding when I called his name. Stay with me, I whispered, pressing down on the gas. The old motel off Route 6 loomed in the distance, its neon sign flickering like a dying heartbeat. It looked abandoned, only a handful of cars sat in the parking lot, and most of the windows were dark. I pulled up to room 14 and barely had the car in park before I jumped out, racing to James's side. His head lolled against the seat, his body too still. I threw open the door. James? No response. Panic shot through me as I reached for him, gripping his face in my hands. His skin was cold. Oh God. I didn't have time to be careful. I yanked him from the seat, struggling under his weight as I staggered toward the motel room. My free hand pounded on the door. "Open up," I shouted. For a moment, nothing. Just my ragged breaths, the sound of my heart slamming against my ribs. Then, the door unlocked. It creaked open just enough for me to see a shadowed figure standing inside. A man dressed in dark clothes, his face partially obscured by the dim light. "Get in," he said. I hesitated. "Who are you?" The man didn't answer. Instead, he stepped forward, gripping James under the other arm and pulling him inside with surprising ease. I followed, my instincts screaming at me to be careful, but I didn't have a choice. The door slammed shut behind me. The room was small, barely furnished. Just a bed, a rickety table, and a single lamp casting a yellowish glow. The man laid James down on the bed, then turned to face me. Now that I could see him clearly, my breath caught. I knew him. Not personally, but from the photos. From my wedding. He was one of them. One of the men who had been watching us that night. "Who the hell are you?" I demanded, my voice shaking. The man exhaled, rubbing a hand down his face. He looked exhausted, older than I'd expected, with sharp eyes that seemed to be calculating every possible outcome of this moment. Then he spoke. "My name is Malcolm," he said. "And if you want to save your husband, you need to listen carefully." I took a step back, my body instinctively tensing. Malcolm. The name meant nothing to me, but his face did. I had seen him in the background of my wedding photos, lurking like a ghost in the crowd. Watching. Waiting. And now, 10 years later, he was standing in front of me, claiming he could save James. I swallowed hard. "Why should I trust you?" Malcolm let out a slow breath. "Because I'm the only one who can bring him back." I looked over at James. His body was still, his chest barely rising and falling. His skin was paler than before, his lips parted slightly like he was on the verge of slipping into something deeper, something irreversible. I didn't have time to argue. "Then do it," I said, my voice cracking. "Fix him." Malcolm nodded once, then moved toward a duffel bag sitting on the motel table. He unzipped it, pulling out a small medical case, a syringe, and a laptop. My stomach twisted. "What are you doing?" He didn't look at me as he powered on the device. "James isn't just sick, Sophia. His brain is shutting down. Too many conflicting memories, too much damage from the reconditioning." He glanced at me. "You know what they did to him, right?" I hesitated. I knew pieces. That Kane and his people had taken James, wiped his mind, reprogrammed him into someone else. That he had lived a decade under a new identity, believing he was someone he wasn't. But I had a horrible feeling Malcolm was about to tell me something worse. "They didn't just erase him," Malcolm continued. "They replaced him. Over and over again." My breath caught in my throat. "What?" Malcolm typed something into the laptop, pulling up a series of files. "They didn't just give him one new identity. They gave him dozens. Every time he outlived his usefulness, they reset him into someone else." His jaw tightened. "And now, all those memories are colliding in his head at once." I felt sick. I turned to James, my fingers brushing against his forehead. He was burning up. His muscles twitched slightly like he was caught in some kind of internal war. "How do we stop it?" I whispered. Malcolm picked up the syringe. "By forcing his mind to choose." I stiffened. "Choose what?" Malcolm's expression darkened. "Who he wants to be." He nodded toward the laptop screen. I stepped closer, and what I saw made my blood run cold. It was a list of names. James Carter, Ethan Vaughn, Lucas Reed, Daniel Holt, Marcus Gale, and more. At least 20 different identities. My hands clenched into fists. "You're saying?" I swallowed hard. "James could wake up as anyone?" Malcolm nodded grimly. "If we do this, we might get him back. But we also might not." The room suddenly felt smaller, like the walls were closing in. I looked at James, his face so familiar yet so fragile. Could I really risk it? Could I really press that button and take the chance that the man I loved, the man I married, might never come back? Malcolm held up the syringe. "This is your call, Sophia." My heart pounded. I had seconds to decide. And if I chose wrong, I might lose James forever. My hands trembled as I stared at the syringe in Malcolm's grip. James was slipping away. His body was barely reacting, his breath shallow, his mind trapped in a chaos of identities. If we did nothing, he'd be lost forever. But if we did this, if I let Malcolm inject whatever was in that syringe, James might wake up as someone else. Someone who didn't remember me. Someone who didn't love me. I swallowed hard. "What's in it?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Malcolm's gaze was steady. A neural stabilizer. It'll force his brain to settle on one identity before the overload kills him. I exhaled sharply. And you don't know which one he'll choose. Malcolm didn't answer. He didn't have to. I turned back to James, brushing a strand of hair from his forehead. He looked so different from the man I had married 10 years ago. His features sharper, his body leaner, hardened by whatever life he had been forced into. But beneath it all, I knew him. I had chased him for a decade. Fought for him. I couldn't lose him now. Do it, I whispered. Malcolm didn't hesitate. He pressed the needle into James's arm and injected the serum. I gripped James's hand, my breath caught in my throat. Seconds passed. Then, his body convulsed. I gasped, tightening my hold on him as his back arched violently, his fingers twitching. His pulse spiked, his breathing turning ragged. Malcolm checked the laptop screen. His brain activity is peaking. This is it. He's choosing. I held on to James, my heart slamming against my ribs. Come back to me, I whispered. Please. His convulsions slowed. His body stilled. For a long, terrible moment, nothing happened. Then, his fingers twitched in mine. My breath caught. James? His eyelids fluttered. A small, pained groan slipped from his lips. Then, slowly, hesitantly, his eyes opened. Deep blue. Familiar. But when they locked onto me, I saw nothing but confusion. His lips parted. Who are you? The world shattered. My breath hitched. James, asterisk or whoever he was now asterisk, stared at me, his deep blue eyes blank, unfamiliar. No recognition. No warmth. Just confusion. Who are you? He repeated, his voice hoarse. My stomach twisted painfully. I had prepared for this possibility. Malcolm had warned me. But hearing those words felt like a knife to my chest. I tightened my grip on his hand. James, it's me. It's Sophia. He blinked slowly like he was processing the name. Then, after a long silence, I don't know you. My heart shattered. I shook my head, my throat tightening. No, that's not, you do know me. We were married. You disappeared 10 years ago. You were taken. My voice wavered. I never stopped looking for you. His brows furrowed slightly, but there was no spark of recognition. Just distant curiosity, like I was a stranger telling him someone else's story. I turned to Malcolm, desperation clawing at me. This is temporary, right? He'll remember? Malcolm's expression was unreadable. I don't know. I inhaled sharply, trying to push back the rising panic. Asterisk no. No, this can't be it. Asterisk. I turned back to James, cupping his face with both hands. Listen to me. Your name is James Carter. We got married 10 years ago. You disappeared on our wedding night. My voice trembled. I found you again, James. I fought for you. I love you. His gaze softened slightly, but there was still hesitation, like I was speaking a language he almost understood but couldn't quite grasp. Then quietly, my name isn't James. Ice flooded my veins. I pulled back, shaking my head. Yes, it is. That's who you really are. They just... No, his voice was calm but firm. I remember my name. It's Ethan. I froze. Ethan. One of the identities from Malcolm's laptop. One of the lives James had been forced to live. Panic surged through me. No, that's not right. That's just one of the fake names they gave you. You're James, you have to be. But he didn't react. He wasn't fighting it. Because in his mind he really believed it. Tears blurred my vision. This wasn't just a risk. It was my worst nightmare coming true. The man in front of me looked like James. Sounded like James. But James was gone. I swallowed hard. Ethan, I whispered, barely able to say it. What do you remember? He hesitated, as if piecing it together. I remember growing up in Chicago. He exhaled. I was a paramedic. Worked crazy shifts. Had a dog, Charlie. He let out a small, distant chuckle. That dog chewed through everything. My hands curled into fists. That's not your life, James. I remember getting recruited, he continued, his expression darkening. A government program. Special operations. They trained me for years, but I don't know what for. He shook his head. And then, his voice trailed off. And then what? I pressed. His eyes flickered with uncertainty. It's fragmented. His fingers pressed against his temple like he was trying to force the memories back. Like something's missing. Because it wasn't real. I turned to Malcolm, desperation clawing at me. How do we fix this? Malcolm hesitated. His brain settled on an identity. Forcing another shift could kill him. I gritted my teeth. Then there has to be another way. James, asterisk Ethan asterisk. looked between us, suspicion creeping into his face. What the hell is going on? I looked back at him, my voice breaking. They stole your life, I whispered. And I need you to remember it. A heavy silence filled the room. Then, a knock at the door. 3 sharp raps. My blood ran cold. Malcolm's entire body tensed. They found us. James, Ethan, reached for something instinctively. A weapon that wasn't there. His soldier instincts kicking in. The doorknob turned. And then, the lock clicked open. The door creaked open an inch. My entire body locked up. For a moment, there was only silence. A long, suffocating pause that made my pulse hammer against my ribs. Then, a voice. Come, James. I stopped breathing. James, Ethan, stiffened beside me. His head jerked up, his eyes flickering with something unreadable. Recognition. Fear. The door swung open fully. And there he was. Kane. Standing in the dim light, his tall frame casting a long shadow into the room. Dressed in black like always, his face unreadable. But his eyes, they locked onto James with quiet authority. James's fingers twitched. His breathing shallowed. I turned to him, my heart pounding. Don't listen to him. Kane took a slow step inside. You don't belong here, son. James wavered. His muscles tensed, his expression flickering between confusion and something else. Something dangerous. Malcolm moved first. He reached for the gun holstered at his hip, but Kane was faster. With one swift motion, he raised his hand. And Malcolm froze. Like he was paralyzed. Like his entire body had shut down mid-action. My stomach dropped. James, Ethan, stared at Kane, his hands curling into fists. What did you do to him? Kane didn't answer. Instead, he took another step forward, his gaze steady. You know me. His voice was smooth, assured. You know what we've been through. James flinched. No, I cut in, stepping between them. No, he doesn't. You put things in his head. What? He's not Ethan, he's James, my husband. Kane's eyes flicked to me, cold and calculating. And then he smiled. My blood turned to ice. You really think you know the truth? He said softly. I clenched my fist. I know it. Kane studied me for a moment, then turned back to James. Tell me, son. Do you remember everything? James, no. Ethan stiffened. His jaw clenched. His fingers twitched again like something in his head was breaking apart, shifting. I could see the war happening inside of him. And then, in a quiet, haunted voice, I remembered both. A chill ran down my spine. Kane's smile widened. Good. No, I whispered. I grabbed James's arm, trying to pull him back to me. They did this to you. Don't let them win. James didn't move. His entire body was rigid, his mind caught between two worlds. And then, slowly, agonizingly, he turned to look at me. And for the first time, I wasn't sure who I was looking at. James? Ethan? Or someone else entirely? My heart pounded. Then, Kane held out his hand. A silent command. A choice. James hesitated. His breathing was shaky. His eyes locked onto Kane's outstretched hand. And then, he took a step forward. My breath caught. James, Ethan, was stepping toward Kane. No, this wasn't happening. I grabbed his arm, my fingers digging into his skin. James, stop. He hesitated. For just a second, his body tensed beneath my grip. I saw the flicker of something in his eyes. Doubt, hesitation, recognition. But Kane's voice was calm, steady, hypnotic. You don't belong here, son. James, no. Ethan stared at him. And then, in a voice barely above a whisper, I know. My chest tightened. I yanked his arm harder, forcing him to look at me. No, you don't know. They took you. They erased you and made you into someone else. My voice cracked. Please, James. Fight this. His face twisted, conflict tearing through him. I could see it, two identities colliding, memories battling for control. Then his eyes softened. For a fleeting second I saw him. My James. His fingers twitched against mine. His lips parted like he was about to say something. And then, in one swift motion, Kane pulled something from his pocket and pressed it against James's neck. A small device. A sharp click. James's entire body jerked. His eyes went wide, his muscles locking up. And then he collapsed. No! I screamed, lunging forward. Kane caught him effortlessly, like he had done this 1,000 times before. He looked at me, completely unfazed, as James sagged against his shoulder. You should have let this go, Sophia. I trembled, rage and terror crashing over me in waves. "What did you do to him?" Kane didn't answer. He simply turned, supporting James's weight, and walked toward the door. I ran after them, but Malcolm, suddenly freed from whatever had paralyzed him, grabbed my wrist. No. I thrashed against his grip. "We can't let them take him." Malcolm's jaw was tight, his eyes burning with frustration. "Sophia, listen to me. If you go after him now, you'll die." "I don't care." But Malcolm wasn't letting go. His grip was iron. "You can't save him if you're dead." I froze. Kane was already at the door, James limp in his arms. He glanced back at me one last time, his face unreadable. Then he stepped out into the hallway. The door clicked shut behind him. James was gone. Again. I stood there, my entire body shaking. My mind screamed at me to move, to chase him, to do something. But my legs wouldn't work. Malcolm's voice was quiet. "We'll get him back." I turned to him, tears burning in my eyes. "How?" Malcolm exhaled, his expression grim. "By finding out what Kane really wants." I swallowed hard. Because deep down I already knew. This wasn't about James. This was about something bigger. And if we didn't figure it out soon, I might lose James forever. I sat in the silence of the motel room, my breath shaky, my hands curled into fists. James was gone. Again. The weight of it settled in my chest like a stone. Malcolm stood by the window, his jaw tight. He was thinking, planning, but I couldn't focus on him. All I could see was the way James's body had gone limp in Kane's arms. The way his eyes had flickered, just for a second, like he was still in there, fighting. I swallowed the lump in my throat. "We have to get him back." Malcolm nodded. "We will." I turned to him, my voice sharp. "How?" Kane is always a step ahead. He took James right in front of us like we were nothing. How do we stop someone like that? Malcolm exhaled, rubbing his temple. "We find out what he really wants." I frowned. "He wants James. He always has." Malcolm shook his head. "No. He wants something from James. Otherwise, why bother keeping him alive all these years? Why take him again instead of killing him when he had the chance?" I opened my mouth, then shut it. Because he was right. If Kane had only wanted James gone, he would have disappeared for good 10 years ago. But instead, he had been made into someone else. Kept under control. Used. My stomach twisted. "You think James knows something?" "Or knew something," Malcolm said. "Something important enough that they buried him under layer after layer of false identities. Maybe he was never supposed to remember it all." I swallowed. "Then why take him now?" Malcolm's face darkened. "Because he did remember." A chill ran down my spine. I replayed the moment in my head, James standing there, caught between two realities. I remembered both. Kane had taken him the moment he said those words. I clenched my fist. "We need to find Kane." Malcolm nodded. "I might know where to start." I turned to him sharply. "Where?" He pulled out his laptop and set it on the table. "Kane's a ghost. No digital footprint. No official records. But he leaves patterns." He tapped on the keyboard, pulling up a map with dozens of red pins. These are all the locations connected to his operations over the years. Safe houses. Drop points. Black sites. I scanned the screen. "Which one do you think he took James to?" Malcolm hesitated. "If he wants to recondition James, he'll need a facility. Somewhere secure with the right equipment. That narrows it down." He zoomed in on 3 locations. One was in an abandoned military base. One was underground beneath a warehouse. One was in a high-rise disguised as an office building. I took a deep breath. "So which one?" Malcolm's fingers hovered over the keyboard. "If I were Kane," he clicked on the military base, "I'd take him here." I stared at the map, my pulse quickening. This was it. James was there. And we were going to get him back. No matter what it took. The night was eerily quiet as we drove toward the abandoned military base. My hands were clenched so tightly in my lap that my nails dug into my palms, but I barely felt it. My mind was on James, Ethan, whoever he was now, He was in there. Somewhere. And Kane was with him. Malcolm drove with laser focus, his jaw tense. The headlights barely cut through the dense fog rolling over the cracked pavement. The whole place looked dead, like a forgotten relic from another time. But it wasn't dead. Not completely. I could feel it. Something was watching us. Malcolm killed the lights as we approached the outer fence. We go in quiet. No guns, no direct confrontation. The goal is to extract James, not start a war. I nodded, my throat dry. "And if James doesn't want to come?" Malcolm didn't look at me. Then we make him. I swallowed hard. There was no turning back now. We cut through the perimeter fence and moved through the shadows, sticking low. My heart pounded so loudly I was afraid it would give us away. The main building loomed ahead, massive, silent, its windows dark. But there was movement near the side entrance. A single guard barely paying attention. Malcolm moved first. Quick, efficient. Before the guy could react, he was unconscious on the ground. I barely had time to process it before Malcolm grabbed my wrist and pulled me toward the door. Move. Inside, the air was stale. The hallways stretched in eerie silence, only broken by the occasional flickering light overhead. It felt like the kind of place that had been abandoned a long time ago, except for the fact that we knew it wasn't. James was here. We crept through the corridors, pausing at every sound. Somewhere deeper in the facility, I heard footsteps. A voice. Then, a scream. I froze. James. Malcolm grabbed my arm, his voice a whisper. Stay focused. But I was already moving. I didn't care about the plan. I didn't care about being careful. All I knew was that James was in pain and I was done waiting. We reached a door at the end of the hall. Heavy. Reinforced. A small window in the center. I pressed my palms against the glass and my breath caught in my throat. James was inside. Strapped to a chair, electrodes on his temples. His face twisted in agony as a monitor beside him beeped rapidly. Kane stood nearby, watching in eerie silence. Malcolm pulled a device from his pocket, working on the door's lock. 30 seconds. I barely heard him. My focus was on James, his clenched jaw, his twitching fingers. Then suddenly, his eyes snapped open, and he looked right at me. Recognition flared in his gaze. His lips parted, forming a single word. Sophia? A choked sound left my throat. I'm here. Then, the alarms blared. The alarms screamed through the building, red warning lights flashing against the cold metal walls. My pulse spiked as Malcolm cursed under his breath, his fingers flying over the lock mechanism. We need 10 more seconds, he growled. We didn't have 10 seconds. Kane turned toward the window, his face eerily calm as he met my gaze. A slow, knowing smile spread across his lips. Then he reached for something on the console. James's body jerked violently. His head snapped back, his muscles seizing as raw electricity surged through him. His scream ripped through me like a blade. I reacted without thinking. I grabbed a fire extinguisher from the wall and swung it at the window with every ounce of strength I had. The glass spiderwebbed but didn't break. I swung again. And again. The lock on the door clicked just as the glass shattered. Malcolm shoved the door open, his gun raised. Get him. I didn't need to be told twice. I rushed to James, my hands fumbling with the restraints. His skin was damp with sweat, his breaths ragged. James, I whispered, I'm getting you out of here. His eyelids fluttered, his body trembling. As Sophia. The last restraint came free. I wrapped my arms around him, trying to lift him, but he was weak. His legs barely able to hold his weight. Kane didn't move. He just watched us, come, unbothered, like he had already won. Malcolm stepped between us, his gun trained on Kane's head. Move and I end this. Kane didn't even blink. He tilted his head slightly as if studying us. Do you even understand what you're doing? I gritted my teeth. We're taking him back. Kane exhaled slowly. Then, so softly I almost didn't hear it. There is no back. A chill ran through me. Malcolm's grip on the gun tightened. Step aside. Now. Kane finally moved. But not to attack. Not to fight. He simply reached into his coat and pulled out a small black remote. My heart stilled. I wouldn't, he warned, his voice smooth as ice. Not unless you want to lose him again. I clutched James tighter. What are you talking about? Kane's gaze flicked to James, who was barely holding on to consciousness. Do you really think he's the same man you lost 10 years ago? I swallowed hard. He's my husband. Kane's expression didn't change. Then tell me, what if I told you the real James never made it out that night? The room spun. My grip on James loosened. No, you're lying. Kane took a step forward, his voice low. The man you're holding, the one you risked everything to find, isn't James. My vision blurred. My knees felt weak. Kane's voice was barely above a whisper. He's Ethan. The world around me crumbled. I shook my head, gripping James, Ethan, tighter. No, that's not true. Kane just stared at me, calm, unwavering. I told you before. James never made it out that night. No, I whispered, my voice shaking. That's not possible. I saw him. I saw his fear. He remembered me. Kane's lips curled into something that wasn't quite a smile. Did he? My stomach twisted. I turned to James, Ethan, desperate for something in his eyes that would prove Kane wrong. James, tell me he's lying. James, or Ethan, just stared at me, his pupils blown wide, his body still trembling from the electric shock. His lips parted, but no words came out. And then, he laughed. Soft at first, almost like a breath. Then a choked chuckle that sent ice through my veins. Malcolm's gun shifted slightly. What the hell is so funny? James, or whoever he was, finally looked up at me. And when he did, my heart stopped. Because I didn't recognize the man looking back at me. His voice was hoarse, raw, but steady. I remember everything now. The room spun. James, I whispered, but he just smiled. Not the way James used to. Not the way my husband, the man I'd spent 10 years searching for, would have. The smile was wrong, cold, detached. And worst of all, knowing. I took a step back, my pulse hammering. Kane exhaled, almost like he pitied me. Sophia, you should have let this go. I barely heard him. My ears were ringing. My mind was screaming. James, Ethan, sighed. I really hoped I wouldn't have to remember. He rubbed his wrists where the restraints had been, testing his movement. Then, with a slow, casual ease, he turned to Kane. And my stomach dropped. Because there was no hesitation. No confusion. Only recognition. Like he'd always known. Like he'd always belonged with him. I stepped back again, my legs shaking. No. This isn't right. They did something to you. James or Ethan looked at me. And in the softest, gentlest voice he said, Sophia, I was never who you thought I was. A sob choked out of me. That's not true. But he just smiled. A different kind of smile. One that shattered everything. Kane placed a hand on his shoulder. And this time, James didn't pull away. The truth crashed over me like a tidal wave. I had spent 10 years searching for a man who didn't exist anymore. And maybe, just maybe, he never did. The room felt suffocating. I stared at James, Ethan, or whoever he was, my breath shallow, my mind screaming for this to be a nightmare. But it wasn't. He wasn't confused. He wasn't scared. He was calm, settled. Like he had finally come home. I shook my head, my voice breaking. This isn't real. This can't be real. James's gaze softened, but there was something hollow in it. Something distant. I wish you hadn't come looking for me, Sophia. Tears burned in my eyes. Why are you saying this? He exhaled slowly. Because it's the truth. Kane tightened his grip on his shoulder, like a father proud of a son. It took long enough, but he's finally where he belongs. Malcolm moved beside me, gun still raised, his entire body tense. I don't buy it. You did something to him. Kane smirked. Oh, I did many things. But none of them changed who he was. I turned back to James, desperate. You loved me. You married me. I was living a lie. The words sliced through me like a blade. My knees nearly buckled. Kane sighed, almost bored. You really thought you knew him? The perfect husband? The loving, devoted man? That was just a mask. No, I whispered. James, Ethan, whatever name he went by, held my gaze. I remember now, Sophia. All of it. He took a step closer, lowering his voice. I wasn't taken that night. My entire body went cold. I left. The world around me shattered. Malcolm muttered a curse under his breath. No, that's bullshit. James smiled. You're a smart man, Malcolm. But you don't see the full picture. My hand shook. Then tell me. James tilted his head. Do you really want the truth? I swallowed hard. Yes. Kane chuckled. She thinks she does. James turned back to me, his voice steady. I was never an innocent man, Sophia. Not before we met. Not when I was with you. And certainly not now. I shook my head. No. You're lying. I was working for Kane the entire time. My breath caught. I was never some lost soul that got swept away. I belonged to this world long before I met you. No, I choked out. I was undercover, he continued, watching me break apart piece by piece. Embedded into a life that wasn't mine. I had a mission. I could barely speak. What mission? His lips parted, and for the first time since this nightmare began, he looked sad. To watch you. The ground beneath me vanished. To watch me. What are you saying? My voice was barely a whisper. James's jaw tightened. You weren't just some woman I fell in love with, Sophia. You were an assignment. I stumbled back, my vision blurring. That's not possible. Malcolm reached for me, steadying me. Sophia. I shoved him off. No, I turned back to James, my heart slamming against my ribs. You're lying. You loved me. I know you did. James lowered his gaze. I tried to. Tried. The word echoed in my skull like a death sentence. Kane's voice was laced with amusement. You thought he disappeared that night? No, Sophia. He was extracted. My pulse roared in my ears. James sighed. I was done with the mission. They pulled me out. Wiped me, but something went wrong. And when I saw you again, the memories started leaking through. I couldn't breathe. The last 10 years. The pain. The searching. The ache of missing him. All of it built on a lie. I took a step back. Then another. James's expression didn't change. I never meant for you to find me. My lip trembled. I wish I hadn't. For the first time his mask cracked. Just for a second. But Kane? Kane was grinning. And I realized I had already lost. James was never coming back. Malcolm's gun was still raised, but his hands weren't as steady as before. Sophia, he murmured, his voice low. We need to go. Now. But I couldn't move. Not yet. I stared at James, Ethan, waiting for something. Anything. A flicker of doubt. A hesitation. A sign that he wasn't completely lost to me. But there was nothing. Just that same unreadable expression. I don't believe you, I whispered, my throat tight. You loved me. I felt it. His jaw tensed, and for a moment, a single fleeting moment, his fingers twitched at his side, like some muscle memory was trying to wake up inside him. Kane sighed dramatically. Sophia, this is getting pathetic. Malcolm took a step back toward the door, his voice sharp. Sophia, we need to leave. James, Ethan, met my gaze one last time. And then, he stepped back. Not toward me. Toward Kane. My stomach dropped. Kane smirked. You see? There was never anything to save. I shook my head. No, that's not true. I turned to James. You chose me once. You can choose me again. His lips parted like he wanted to say something. But he didn't. Instead, Kane clapped a hand on his shoulder. We're done here. Malcolm didn't hesitate. He grabbed my wrist, yanking me toward the door. Sophia, move. The alarm started blaring again. The red lights flashed like warning beacons, the room pulsing with danger. I let Malcolm pull me away, my legs moving on instinct. But I couldn't take my eyes off James. The last thing I saw before we ran was him watching me go. Expressionless. Silent. And then, he turned away. Just like that. Like I had never existed at all. Hashtag. We barely made it out. The facility exploded behind us as we sped away in Malcolm's car, the fire lighting up the night sky. But I felt nothing. Not relief. Not victory. Just a hollow, empty ache. Malcolm was silent as he drove, his grip tight on the wheel. Finally he spoke. I'm sorry, Sophia. I swallowed hard, staring out at the dark road ahead. For what? For bringing you here. For letting you believe there was something to save. I blinked back, the tears burning in my eyes. He was my husband. Malcolm exhaled slowly. Was he? I didn't answer. Because deep down, I didn't know anymore. The man I had spent 10 years chasing was gone. And maybe he never existed in the first place. Hashtag. But here's the thing about loss. It doesn't always mean the end. Because 2 weeks later, I found the note. Slipped under my apartment door. No signature. No explanation. Just 3 words. Find me again. The note trembled in my hands. My breath hitched as I read those 3 words over and over again. Find me again. It was his handwriting. I knew it as surely as I knew my own name. My pulse roared in my ears. This didn't make sense. It couldn't make sense. James, Ethan, had made his choice. He had stepped back, turned away, left me behind. And yet, I knew this was from him. I could feel it. I grabbed my phone, my fingers shaking as I dialed Malcolm. He picked up on the second ring. Sophia? Someone left a note under my door, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. From him. There was silence on the other end. Then, lock your doors. Stay inside. I'm on my way. The call ended. I clutched the note tighter, my mind racing. Was this a trap? Was Kane playing games with me? Or had James not been as lost as I thought? I exhaled shakily. If he was still in there, if there was still a chance. I wasn't about to give up now. Not until I knew the real truth. I paced the living room, my fingers clenched around the note. Every fiber of my being told me this was real. That James, Ethan was reaching out. But why? Had he regained more of his memories? Was this a warning? A test? Or was it another trick? A sharp knock on my door jolted me. Malcolm. I swung the door open and he stepped inside, his expression grim. He locked the door behind him, then turned to me. Let me see it. I handed him the note. He read it twice, then sighed. Damn it. What does it mean? I demanded. Is he asking for help? Or is Kane using him to lure me in? Malcolm's jaw tightened. Could be either. But we can't ignore it. He met my eyes. You know that, don't you? I nodded, my heart pounding. So what do we do? Malcolm exhaled, glancing out the window like he expected someone to be watching. First, we figure out how he got this to you. There are cameras in your building, right? I swallowed hard. Yeah, downstairs. In the lobby. Then let's go. ####. The security footage was grainy, but there was no mistaking what we saw. 2:47 a.m. A black car pulled up outside my building. The camera caught a man stepping out, tall, lean, moving with careful precision. He kept his head down, his face obscured by the hood of his jacket. But when he reached the front entrance, he looked up, and my breath caught. It was him. James. Ethan. Whoever he was. The timestamp showed he stood there for exactly 13 seconds. Then he slipped the note under the door and walked away, vanishing into the night. I gripped the edge of the desk. He's not with Kane. If he was, he wouldn't have come alone. Malcolm nodded slowly. Or he wants us to think that. I turned to him. Then there's only one way to find out. Malcolm sighed. You want to go after him? I met his gaze. I need to. Malcolm rubbed his temple. You really don't know when to quit, do you? I smiled faintly. You wouldn't be here if I did. He muttered something under his breath, then straightened. Fine. But we do this my way. Carefully. No rushing in blind. I nodded. Where do we start? Malcolm tapped the screen, rewinding the footage to the moment James disappeared. We follow the trail. Malcolm and I sat in his car, parked a block away from the address we traced James to. The building was old, its windows dark except for a faint glow on the third floor. My heart hammered in my chest. This could be a trap, Malcolm warned, his voice low. I tightened my grip on the note. Then why would he risk coming to my apartment? Why leave me this? Malcolm sighed. Let's find out. We moved quickly, slipping through the front entrance and up the creaky stairwell. Every step felt like I was walking into something I wasn't ready to face. When we reached the third floor, Malcolm motioned for me to stay back as he checked the hallway. Then he nodded. It's clear. I stepped forward, my pulse roaring in my ears. Apartment 3B. The door was slightly open. I swallowed hard and pushed it open. James stood in the center of the dimly lit room, alone. But he wasn't the man I had chased for 10 years. He looked broken, his face was gaunt, his eyes hollow. The confident, unreadable mask he had worn when he was with Kane was gone. And in its place, fear, regret, pain. I took a slow step inside. James? His jaw tightened. Don't call me that. I flinched. He let out a shaky breath. Sophia, I didn't want you to come. Then why did you leave me the note? I demanded. Why are we here? His hands clenched into fists at his sides. Because I had to warn you. Malcolm stepped in behind me, his gun lowered but ready. Warn her about what? James, Ethan looked past me, his face shadowed with something I couldn't name. And then he whispered, he's coming. My stomach dropped. Malcolm reacted instantly, reaching for his gun. But it was too late. The moment James spoke those words, the lights in the building cut out. And from the hallway, the sound of footsteps. Slow, deliberate, and then, a voice. Calm, cold, unshaken. You should have run farther, Sophia. Okay. The air in the room shifted. My pulse pounded as the footsteps drew closer. Kane's voice was smooth, almost amused. I gave you a chance to walk away. Pause. But you just had to chase ghosts, didn't you? Malcolm moved first. He grabbed my arm and pulled me behind him, raising his gun toward the doorway. Sophia, stay back. James, Ethan stood frozen, his fists clenched at his sides. The door creaked wider. And there he was. Kane stepped inside, completely calm. Two men flanked him, their expressions blank, their guns already drawn. Put the gun down, Malcolm, Kane said. You're outnumbered. Malcolm didn't lower his aim. Yeah, try me. Kane barely glanced at him. His focus was on me. "I have to admit, Sophia," he murmured, "you've impressed me. Most people give up long before this point. But not you." He took a step forward. "You really love him, don't you?" I swallowed hard. "What do you want?" Kane tilted his head slightly. "The real question is, what do you want?" He turned to James. "Or Ethan. Or whoever he was." "You brought her here," Kane said almost lazily. "Did you want her to see the truth? Or were you hoping she'd save you?" James' jaw tightened. He didn't move. Didn't answer. Kane smirked. "Ah, that's what I thought." A flicker of something passed over James' face. "Guilt? Regret?" Kane turned back to me. "Do you really think he's the same man you married?" Silence stretched between us. And then, James finally spoke. His voice was hoarse, barely above a whisper. "I remember everything." My breath caught. James turned to me, his eyes raw, filled with something I couldn't name. "I remember us. For the first time in 10 years I saw it. The man I fell in love with. The man I lost." My chest ached. "Then come with me." James inhaled sharply. Kane let out a quiet chuckle. "Come with you." He gestured at the door. "Where exactly do you think you're going to run?" James looked at me. His expression was torn, like something inside him was breaking. And then, he moved. Fast. Before Kane could react, James lunged. He grabbed the gun from one of Kane's men, twisting it in his hands. The shot rang out. The man dropped. Chaos erupted. Malcolm fired. I ducked. Kane snarled something, drawing his own weapon. And then James grabbed my wrist. "Run." I didn't hesitate. We tore out of the apartment, Malcolm right behind us. More gunfire. More shouts. My heartbeat was a war drum in my ears as we bolted down the stairwell, taking 2 steps at a time. But I barely felt it, because for the first time in a decade, James was running toward me. Not away. And I wasn't about to lose him again. Not now. Not ever. We ran. Down the stairwell. Through the darkened hallway. The air was thick with the scent of gunpowder and adrenaline. Footsteps pounded behind us. Kane's men were in pursuit. James' grip on my wrist was tight, unyielding. He wasn't letting go. Not this time. Malcolm kicked open the exit door, leading us into the alley. The cold air hit my face like a slap, but I barely felt it. A black SUV screeched to a stop at the curb. Reinforcements. Kane wasn't letting us leave. James swore under his breath. "We need to split up." "No," I said immediately. "We're not doing this again." James turned to me, his expression torn. "Sophia." Gunfire erupted. Malcolm shoved me behind a dumpster as bullets ricocheted off the brick walls. James ducked beside me, breathing hard. "We're running out of time," Malcolm hissed. "They'll surround us in seconds." James clenched his jaw, then looked at me. His eyes were wild, desperate. "I have to end this." My breath caught. "What?" James turned, locking eyes with Malcolm. "Get her out of here." "No," I said fiercely. "No, we do this together." James grabbed my face, pressing his forehead against mine. His voice was a whisper. "I love you." And then, he was gone. Before I could stop him, before I could grab his arm, he sprinted toward the SUV. Straight toward Kane. "James?" I tried to run after him, but Malcolm held me back. "Sophia, we have to go." Tears burned my eyes as I watched James disappear into the chaos. The last thing I saw was him tackling Kane, knocking him to the ground. And then Malcolm dragged me away. ####. We drove in silence. My hands trembled in my lap. I kept waiting for my phone to ring. For James to somehow call. But it never came. Days passed. Then weeks. The news reported a massive shootout in the city that night. Kane's entire operation had crumbled. Many of his men had been arrested. But James was never found. Malcolm and I searched. We followed every lead, every whisper. But it was like he had vanished again. Only this time, I didn't know if he was coming back. ####. 1 year later, I sat on a park bench watching the world move on. People laughed. Couples held hands. Life continued. I wasn't the same woman who had spent 10 years searching for answers. I had found them. I had found him. And even though I lost him again, at least this time I knew the truth. I closed my eyes, feeling the wind brush against my skin. And then, a voice. Soft. Familiar. "Sophia." My breath caught. I turned. And there, standing a few feet away,